Yeah, it's funny. One of our close friends is an accountant. And if you had met him in the office, you would never know that he had full sleeve, full back, full thigh tattoos. You would never know it. Looked the most clean cut, eloquent speaker, really knowledgeable. You would have never known. But I knew him outside of the office, and I knew in a soccer jersey, there were lots of tattoos.
Right, yes.
But it's funny because even then this would have been 2010s-ish era, he recognized that in order to get ahead in his industry, he could be his authentic self. He just didn't have to be broadcasting all the things of himself.
Hi, and welcome to Two CPAs in the Mic, the podcast where we talk tax, finance, and all things related to business. Whether you're a business owner, working professional, or someone who wants to start a career in accounting, this is the podcast for you. Hosted by CCK Strategies partners Jeff Frable and Sara Mays, we dive into relevant business and tax matters with working professionals to make these topics less intimidating, relatable, and dare we say fun? Let's get down to business.
Welcome back to another episode of Two CPAs and the Mic. We are covering relevant business, tax, and accounting topics, but are doing it with straight talk, some unexpected humor, and practical information without all the jargon and stuffiness of our profession as CPAs. We're glad you joined us today. Today, our episode is focusing on current issues and concerns and dilemmas facing small business owners as it relates particularly to human resources and human relations. We're going to define human resources. We're going to talk about changes in the workforce that are going on. We're going to talk about dress code, motivation, work ethic, and work expectations. And you all know we are a part of CCK Strategies. We are not necessarily going to be talking about what CCK does or what CCK has implemented, but talking as a whole to what these issues are. So it's going to be beneficial to all business owners out there. We're glad you joined us. Again, I am Jeff Frable with CCK Strategies. I have been a partner here for I've been here 25 years, partner for 20 years.
Yeah.
So, but my trusty co-host is with us, Sara Mays. Hey, Sara.
Hey, Jeff. Hey, I'm Sara Mays. I've been with CCK for 18 years and the freshly hatched partner just this year. Also joining, just a fresh egg. Also joining us is Christy Porter. Hey, Christy.
Hey,
Good morning. Good morning, team.
Our trusty on-air producer.
Yes. And then I get the privilege of introducing our amazing human resources director, or is it director of human resources?
It can be
either one, right? We've got Victoria here with us today. And Victoria, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and make it like as lengthy as you want. We want to know about I know I said short bio, but tell us about how, because this is going to be my edification for me. I want to know all about you because we really don't get to talk because you're in our Frisco office. I do get to see you about once a month, but I do want to know about you, your professional journey, everything that you've done, and then how you landed at CCK.
Wow, God, that would take up the whole episode.
Yeah, right. Go for it.
Victoria, what she didn't tell you is she memorizes all of this information and uses it for later. She does.
I'm fine with that. I do the same.
Betty's birthday.
Yes. Oh,
I
yes.
totally do the same.
Yes.
Never know when you need that random tidbit.
Exactly.
I am Victoria Guerre. I was born in Dallas to Yankee parents. So no, I didn't acquire an accent until I went off to college at Texas Tech. I did go to Bishop Lynch High School, so raised Catholic, maybe not so much of a practicing Catholic now, but at least was raised right. But I went to Texas Tech thinking I was going to do sports psychology or be a diplomat. And I came out with a psychology degree because once I got into the ESS classes, I did not want to spend that much time doing sports stuff, even though I was an athlete in high school. But decided that I didn't also want to spend the next 6 years going to school and starving. So I graduated early with my psychology degree and fell into a role in recruiting. Now, I'll show my age here. This is back in the day when you got a stack of resumes when you started of people who had applied to prior jobs. and a list of positions, and you were supposed to network and find people to fill those positions.
Oh, wow.
That's how recruiting used to work.
Yeah.
I did not do well at that and landed into Texas Instruments as a contract administrative assistant in their recruiting department, and discovered that, wow, okay, psychology is really applicable in human resources in a lot of ways. So decided that maybe was a good fit for me, and took a couple different roles, kind of the long way around. From an HR coordinator, I did benefits, I did compensation, I did generalist, employee relations. I learned immigration along the way when I was at Texas Instruments, which is now serving me really well.
Right.
And just kind of took a bit of a job rotation method instead of just, going up the ladder quickly. Because in my opinion, if I wanted to be an HR manager or an HR director, I really wanted to understand what all the people that I would be managing do on a day-to-day basis. What affects them? How does their job interplay with other jobs? How does recruiting affect payroll? How does a generalist's attempt at trying to solve a problem lead to retention problems or retention wins? How do benefits, which people don't think about until open enrollment, let's be honest, how does that play into people choosing to come work for us or going to work for a competitor? And how can it make a huge impact on their lives? That's why, for me, benefits is kind of a passionate thing, in part because as a contractor, I never had them. This was all, pre-Obamacare and things like that. But it became kind of a passion thing for me because I could see how much that affected people's ability to do their job. If they're not stressed about having to pay for or take care of their health, they can actually focus on their job, especially if it comes to health issues with their family.
Were you a contractor with TI?
Mm-hmm.
Or okay.
Yeah, that was back when you could be a contractor for 6 years and
no one would ever ask anything about it.
Yeah. Yeah. You were also generally the first to go when the semiconductor waves went down.
Where were you with Texas Instruments, Victoria? Was it up there on North Dallas, or where was it?
It was basically where the high five is. If you're familiar with Dallas, the high five is where 635 and 75 meet. And at the time, the high five was just starting to be under construction. And they had two buildings called the Park Central buildings. And that's what housed most of the benefits. They had time loss management and nurse case managers. That's where their HRIS and payroll teams sat. So they all sat in those two buildings, which don't exist anymore.
How long were you with TI then?
I did 1 year at Texas Instruments, and then I did 6 years in the benefits department there.
Okay. Yeah. So what caused you to leave Texas Instruments?
Oh, that was one of those fun semiconductor downturns.
Okay.
So my boss was let go the day before, and then the next day I came into the office and everybody was in a meeting but me. And then I found out that I was being let go.
Right?
And about what year was this?
Oh gosh, this was late 90s, I think.
Okay.
Somewhere in there. Late 90s, early 2000s.
Since TI, you've been always in human resources all through that. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I've been a coordinator, a generalist, all the way up to VP and down to director again.
Nice. Okay. So how did you land at CCK?
So the company that I was working for was PE backed and just didn't quite make it. And so we had to wind that down. And as we were doing the wind down, I was applying for some roles, and I applied for the one at CCK. And then Christy called me, and I just hit it off really well with Christy. She told me all wonderful things about CCK. And I was like, I've heard that before about other companies, right? Because I've been doing HR for a long time. Yes. Yeah. Employees are the most important resource. Yes, I understand. But not every company lives that. I can testify to that. What has been interesting in my now, 7 months here, is that they actually do live everything Christy told me they were. Everything she told me about how they care, how they support, how they grow, all of it. It's real. It's like what every HR textbook that I read when I was doing my SPHR certification said you were supposed to do to make your employees happy and stay.
Yep.
Well, that's always good to hear. And one of the things about Victoria's transition that's a little bit different for us is we've had the same HR coordinator since inception. So our current director was the first and is in the process of retiring. So you have the challenge of coming in and replacing someone that's been in the firm for 25, 26 years. That's got to be difficult. Yeah.
Yeah.
And still
I
here.
call him the founder. He's the founder of HR at CCK.
He is. He is.
That's a good way to put it. And we'll be sure to tease him about that going forward as well. But well, it sounds like you've had a long journey, Victoria, lots of experience doing lots of things in this arena and lots of large companies. So CCK is pretty much the smallest company that you've worked for then, even though we have 100 plus individuals?
Actually, no, I would say the debt consolidation company that I worked for a little bit was probably the smallest.
Okay.
But I like kind of that 100 to 300 range of span of control, just because you can affect change, but it doesn't have to be just you.
Right.
It can be you and your team, and you can kind of spread the load and actually get deep into things. Whereas sometimes when you're an HR department of one, everything is surface level because you can't dive into anything deep enough to really own it.
But this is your first venture into the public accounting arena, right?
Yes, I've known many accountants in my life.
Lucky you.
I married one. But,
Lucky you.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Okay.
He was not an accountant when we married. However,
well, congratulations for staying with
him. Yes.
I have been a tax widow. I get it.
Yeah. But I guess the thing that I wanted to talk about is that even though it's a public accounting firm, it's a business. And so the things that we're going to talk about are not just public accounting related, but all industries, all realms. And I think that's one of the things that's going to make this discussion interesting for our listeners is applying it to their situation and seeing in some of the things that we talk about, how can they make things better, improve, take care of their teammates and employees through. I think that's one of the things you were mentioning is that through your role, you almost saw it, dare I say, almost like a ministry to take care of people. And a lot of times I think employees just think, well, there's nothing that goes on behind the scenes. I just go in, I make my decision and no one really cares. But you kind of were putting a different face to that, it sounds like.
Yeah, no. And I mean, I've had the benefit of working in a number of industries, and there are some things that are just universal across industries. There are some things that are industry specific. So, accounting has its own unique challenges in regards to, recruiting and just hours and things like that, some of the expectations. But really, for most businesses, there are some universal truths as to what works and what doesn't. And yeah, it's a passion for me because a lot of people think of HR as just the police of the organization, for lack of a better term, or they're the ones you try to avoid and stay under the radar of, or things like that. And I very much do not want to be, Cat Burt, the evil HR director. That's not my goal, right? My goal is to be a resource. That's what human resources is. It's a resource for the humans in your organization. Yeah. It's the person that you go to find out, how do I do this with my benefits? Where do I go to change my 401k? What should I be doing with this employee who isn't meeting my expectations? It's to be that trusted advisor. It's to be that source of information and guidance to help people take all the other stuff out of the way so they can just do their job. It's to empower them to be able to do their job better and faster.
I think she just defined human resources.
Yeah, I think so. I thought about it that way. So I think you did a great job.
Yeah.
Well, Victoria, let's jump into this a little bit. I think what we wanted to do was talk about the different things in the workplace, not only that are going on right now, but maybe how they've evolved over the years. We did a show previously where we talked about the CPA exam, and we talked about how it had changed from when I took it through when Sara took it through when our newest teammate passed. And there was a lot of fun in that. But as we've been preparing for this discussion, we've been talking about things that were in the workplace 25, 30 years ago and how they've changed. And that's just the caveat with what we're talking here. We're not saying anything's better or worse. It's just a matter of how they've changed and how you've had to adapt to it. So as we get into this, let's do the typical discussion about the generations in the workplace, because that's really where you need to start understanding people. So tell us a little bit about who's in the workplace these days. Is it just the millennials and the Xers and the Zs, or who are we dealing with?
No, I mean, you still have boomers, you have Gen X, you have the full gamut. And I think my daughter's alpha. She's like 13 and a half. I think
They're
that's what
coming up.
that generation is. And
Alpha. Yeah.
boy, howdy, are they alpha sometimes. But, but there are definitely differences, largely in the way that they view what work is to them and in the way that you communicate things to them. Those seem to be the biggest areas of difference. They generally care about most of the same things, but for boomers and Gen Xers, we were used to, you were there at 8 o'clock. If you were there at 8:05, you were demerit, whatever you want to call that, you were in trouble. And especially we tried when the Gen X was going in to try to do telecommuting, teleworking, where you could work from home. And I actually had bosses that did that back in the early 2000s, and they allowed it, but it wasn't exactly like, okay, it was a little frowned upon, but they made it work. And so fast forward, we had all these initiatives in human resources and in business to try to allow people to have more flexibility and to work-life integration, work-life balance, all of these terms you've heard. And it really became, it fast forwarded during COVID. Yeah. COVID forced everybody to fast forward their thinking on how remote work can work and should work. And it took a lot of people, kind of set them off balance a little bit. There are a lot of people really resistant to that. And you need to be in the office. I need to be able to see you. I need to be able to know what you're doing. I can't trust you to work from home. And it really kind of brought to light what's the core of why do you need to be able to see somebody sitting in a seat to prove that they are being effective and productive.
Frable, do you think we should stop and talk a little bit about CCK's journey on work-life balance?
Sure. Do you want to start it?
Yeah. So Victoria, I think you mentioned it was early 2000s. I started at CCK in 2006, and we could work remote from day one. I mean, when I started, and Jeff, I don't know when you actually implemented that. When did you guys truly implement the ability to work remote?
Yeah, I'm not sure when we started that benefit or allowing that. I just remember the transition, and this is kind of slightly different, but I remember the transition from the paper work papers and the paper files to electronic. Yeah. And we really were somewhat ahead of our time. One of our founders, John Curzon, put that into place. And I remember him saying, we just want the file to look the same. It's just digital. So I remember that. And I think it just naturally gravitated. And that policy changed over time. At first, it was more of you can do it for sake of ease, to accommodate something that's going on.
Like if you had somebody come into the house for air conditioning and stuff like
absolutely. And there were things like you really kind of need to let people know that you were going to be remote. And it was, if you were kind of staying remote too many days, it was not frowned upon, but it was just like what's going on. And then we always had that ability to do it, and we did it pretty seamlessly. And then and a lot of people utilize that benefit, but we had policies. You had to be with the firm so long before you could really start working remote. And then COVID, like Victoria said, just turned it all upside down. And
but it made it so easy for us.
Well, and that's what I was going to say to our credit. And I'm going to brag on ourselves a little bit. Yeah. It was literally, hey, this is going to happen. And tomorrow everybody's going to be remote. And there was not an issue. I mean, we were ready. And we were naturally prepared for that transition. And now it's just, we have totally remote workers. And it's just like, you could literally feel like I'm going to wake up today and just work remote if I want to. But there's the communication that goes on with teammates. You absolutely need to be communicating so that everyone knows where you are and if you're available. But yeah, it's been a journey.
Jeff, during that time, I was in recruiting, and we had people who we were trying to speak to online. And one of the things I remember the most and telling people was, we've been doing this for a while. When we were put into a remote force position, it was pretty much turnkey for us. Our problems were not the technology. We were so grateful that we had that in place. It was the little things like, I need a couple of monitors. My chair at home is not conducive for working 8 hours. those were easy fixes. You saw
Yeah.
people loading up their
Yeah.
equipment
You
and
did.
taking it. It was
Yep.
really funny.
Mhm.
But I mean, if we kind of felt fortunate that that's the problem. But then that connection, which we've talked about with the tools that we've used. And Victoria, that's, I think, what I didn't mean to interrupt, but I'd love to hear kind of what you've seen.
Well, and to your point, Jeff, things like VPN and laptops made all of those things possible. Like we wouldn't have been able to do that if we couldn't securely get into networks the way that we do. And so whoever was doing your technology at the time definitely set you guys up for success in that regard. When COVID hit, I was actually at a technology company and everybody had company issued laptops. And much to Chrissy's point, the problem wasn't that you couldn't connect. The problem was I live in an apartment and I have 2 kids and I can't, like, what do I do? And where do I put them? Or, the monitors, or we had people with stand-up desks. When COVID hit, we were going to do a trial run week, and our trial run week went into go live week, And then, a couple months into it, we're like, okay, why are we paying this outrageous rent for the property that we're in when everybody's doing fine working remote? Let's just let everybody come get all their stuff and let's just close the office down. And so we did. We went fully remote. We had no offices. Like if you wanted to go meet with people, you had to go meet at a Starbucks or rent a hotel and use the conference room, which had its own challenges. There is some benefit to being able to be face to face for certain things. One of the things I realized early on with Zoom, if you had a lot of people with opinions on one Zoom meeting in different places or a couple gathered here and one person online, you were not getting the full communication. Everybody was not having a voice. You had to wait to speak over somebody and you would lose your train of thought. And it just didn't flow the same as it did if you were sitting in a room collaborating. And that, I think, was the piece that we felt was missing when we went fully remote. And so the hybrid model really does work the best, in my opinion, for a lot of industries. Not every industry.
Right.
You can't be hybrid in retail. You can't in manufacturing. There's certain things it just doesn't work. And that's okay. But to the extent that you can be flexible for your employees and allow them to have that individual responsibility and be responsible, that's their part of the agreement, right? You're allowing them the freedom. They have to be responsible. And so long as that's working for both sides, there's no reason you can't do it.
Well, I want to kind of transition to another area, Victoria, because I think this is a really good segue. And I really appreciated what you said before about the differences in the generations is really related to the way they work and the way they communicate. And when I think of communicate, I think of, that's verbally, but it's also the nonverbal and things of that nature. So I want to dig down deep into this topic. And I know everyone's been waiting for me to bring this up, but I want to talk about this important topic of dress code, tattoos, piercings, and things of that nature. Because again, so when I started, it was suits and ties. And I actually
started in working all together, right?
Yes, I'm sorry. In the profession, yes, in our profession, it was suits and ties. I actually had a supervisor who worked with Arthur Andersen. So anybody in our industry is going to recognize that name, one of the big 4. But he talked about how he had to wear a hat. Okay, so this is
a diaper hat, like a hat?
Like a Tom Landry hat?
Yes, yeah, a hat, whatever you call it.
Not a ball cap.
Not a beanie, not a ball cap, but like a dress hat. And so this is 1991. What'd you say, a bolo?
No, I said a chapeau.
I don't even know what that is. I don't even know what that is.
A bolo is a
okay, we digress.
Yeah.
So, but this is 1991. So then it kind of was like, well, maybe once a month we could have a jeans day on Friday. And that, over the years progressed to casual Fridays and all this kind of thing. And now we are fully business casual. And it's a lot depends on who you're meeting with and what you're doing. But, the same goes with piercings and tattoos. I joke about it, but it's just completely different now than it was before. And as we got into this discussion earlier, you brought up a point that I thought was very interesting. And it's all about your personal brand.
Mhm.
And could you talk a little bit about that? Because really the issue is not, do jeans make you work better or worse, or can someone with tattoos be, whatever. It's all about personal brand. And so could you kind of elaborate on that?
Yeah, it's funny. One of our close friends is an accountant. And if you had met him in the office, you would never know that he had full sleeve, full back, full thigh tattoos. You would never know it. Looked the most clean cut, eloquent speaker, really knowledgeable. You would have never known. But I knew him outside of the office, and I knew in a soccer jersey, there were lots of tattoos.
Right, yes.
But it's funny because even then this would have been 2010s-ish era, he recognized that in order to get ahead in his industry, he could be his authentic self. He just didn't have to be broadcasting all the things of himself. He was broadcasting the parts of himself that were relevant to the job and to his career growth and to his clients. And so that's where the personal branding comes into it. And that's where I don't look to legislate or policy specific things. I mean, hoodies are another one that have come up, right? And whether we need to kind of legislate a specific clothing item, that's not what I'm trying to do, because we're all adults here and we all should be able to have a frank conversation about, if you are going to your client who is the head of a large, very conservative church group, maybe you need to alter your dress just a little bit so that you and the client can have a comfortable conversation and it's not distracting from that conversation. And so that you come across as knowledgeable and a trusted advisor. It's not about squelching your individuality. It's not about saying you can't be your authentic self. Your authentic self just doesn't have to be the very first thing that is in the room.
Yeah.
And so that's where the whole, nose piercing. Okay, fine. Does it have to be a giant nose ring, or could we just put the little tiny diamond stud in for that meeting? Right.
Right.
Well, and Sara, you made the comment about knowing your audience. And I mean, right or wrong, there's perceptions. And you have to know that if you're meeting with someone who potentially is a little older and might have some sort of preconceived idea, again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's just, you just have to know that and be able to adjust, because quite honestly, if I'm going to take a teammate with me and do a presentation of some kind, I don't want anything to get into the way other than our message of who we are. And you know how, not perceptions, but how you can make that first impression. And so I think this discussion is not only for the small business person, the entrepreneur, but it's also for any listener who is a teammate or an employee going, okay, it's not that they don't like me or think I'm wrong because of the way I look. It's just that they have an obligation to deal with these things because they're the ones trying to manage the relationship. So
a lot of times, to make it simplified rather than making it personal, we talk a lot about branding and messaging at CCK. And the last thing that we want to do is for anything to become a distraction when it gets in the way of the message. So if we're looking at a graphic design, something that we're putting out there, I'm asking the question, can the end user take away what we're creating? Is our communication objective being received? And if it's not, have we made art more important than the messaging? And we can say that. We can put it really simply. If anyone is listening and they're wondering, well, this sounds like an attack on my art and my expression. It's not. I would say get over it and think about the messaging. If what we're presenting is a distraction to what we're trying to convey, then that's what our focus should be. Because oftentimes we don't think about that. We think about, I don't want to be limited. Well, the most important part, if that message is really what our objective is, what we're trying to achieve, then don't let anything get in the way that you think it could be perceived. And I'm always coaching, err on the side of, Yeah, it could. It could. Maybe it will. And until you get to know that relationship, it's easy to hold back a little bit and then get to know. And then once you've solidified that credibility, your words and your actions speak for themselves.
Yeah, you don't want to limit your opportunities to show who you really are and your competency and your capabilities. Because once you have that, you can let your guard down a little bit. It's like the substitute teacher that comes in, they have to be really hard at the beginning, make everybody calm down, and then they can let them watch the movie. But you can't go in as a substitute teacher and just say, hey, we're going to watch a movie, because they'll walk right over you.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is there are a lot of different employers out there. And if you are at an employer and you feel like I can never be any piece of myself, then maybe that isn't the right role for you.
Yeah.
Maybe if you really want to show off your tattoos and your piercings, an accountant for a motorcycle club might be a better fit than an Arthur Anderson.
It's a new niche.
Yeah, right.
Maybe.
Or cannabis.
Right. Or cannabis plant, right? I mean, it is. There are so many different industries and areas and ways, cultures and ways of working in this world that you do not have to just try to shove yourself into a place if you don't feel that you fit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of choices.
Well, I'll pivot off that riveting topic because I find it fascinating. But let's try to move towards another part of our outline here where we're talking about like motivation and work ethic and work expectations. Victoria, just kind of talk a little bit about maybe how that is changing through the generations and how we deal with it inside of the workplace.
Yeah, I think it is different because I think, growing up, it was about getting ahead. It was about making more money to be able to retire or to be able to feed your family, whatever it was. Work was a means to an end. It wasn't necessarily a passion or a calling or a career. And I think that changed quite a bit. I think some of the market downturns affected people's views on retirement and whether they'd ever be able to retire when they watched their parents not be able to retire because they lost everything in the markets or whatnot. I think the other piece of it too is we started to recognize that we spend a lot of time at work. It better be something we really enjoy doing. And we better enjoy the people that we're doing it with.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, wow, I've spent so much time doing things I really was miserable at. And so I think that epiphany has started to trickle down into the later generations to the point where for them, belief in a company is more important than necessarily the pay or the opportunities. It's that company aligns with what I believe in or does things that I think are meaningful in the world. They place even more meaning on work than what was in the original, like the Boomer and the Gen X generations, because they do recognize the time commit and they do recognize that what they do has an effect on things broader than themselves. They have more of a global picture than probably I was raised with having. That what you do in the company that you work for can have a larger impact than just, your small community. And so from a motivation standpoint, they are motivated a little bit differently in millennial and Gen Y generations than Gen X because they want to have meaning in their work, not just go to work and come home and have the work be something that you do to get the other things that you want and need that are meaningful in your life.
If I can jump in here, Victoria, I want to just kind of make a comment about CCK and the way that we try to approach things, because your comment about what you're impacting and what you're doing, that's something we try to communicate with our teammates is especially our younger teammates that are new to the profession is it's not just the tax return that you're doing. Right. You are having literally a financial impact on our client. You have the ability to make or break their day with the information that's communicated to them from a timing perspective. And it's not just throw these numbers on a tax return and be done. And so we like to think that we can satisfy that for those generations, that you really do have a meaningful job, or not a job, but what you're doing is very meaningful with our clients for those reasons.
There's a percent behind the numbers.
Yes. Yeah, it's not transactional. It's meant to be a partnership. It's meant to, you have we at CCK have the specialized knowledge, and we're trying to help the business do the best they can using what we have as tools. It's enabling them to be a better business.
Yeah. I think
I'd like to ask, I mean, we talk a lot about generations because we have, generally 5 generations under one roof. That's significant. But we also want to appreciate the individuals. I mean, we're talking about generations and we're generalizing. I see a theme. But I think it's thanks for noticing. But I think it's important to recognize that just because a person is born within one cycle and in time, it doesn't mean that they are. Right. We're all individuals and we all execute differently, and we appreciate everyone for what they do. But it is interesting to see the data and the behaviors of how people, and some of those behaviors are formed from their experiences or how they were raised and their parents' experiences.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of my favorite recent stories is I was talking to somebody and they had asked a younger teammate if they could do something that was after hours, and that person said no, they can't because they were working on their work-life balance. And the person they said that to was a little irritated by it. And my comment to them was, well, is that because you just really deep down wish you could be that way and you just can't make yourself that way and you're just jealous? But there's a lot of things that Chrissy, I like the way you said it, what you said, because it's just like when we talked about Clifton strengths. Yeah. It doesn't mean this is who you are because you're an X or a Y or a millennial, but it just shows there's general tendencies or traits that tend to show up, but it doesn't cause you to be that way at all. So, but yeah, 5 generations under one roof can be a little bit tedious at times.
Jeff, when you made that comment about, do you wish you could be that way? Work-life balance. But I am going to have to push back a little bit on that, because I think too, it hasn't really opened the door to communicate. Because if I asked you to do something, and let's just pretend you're Gen X or you are Gen X. So let's pretend I'm a millennial. Yeah. And you asked me to do something and I came back and said, I'm trying to work on my work-life balance. And as that somebody in that generation or has a different work ethic than you or the person you're talking to, I still think that you shouldn't just take it. I still think that there needs to be some room of communication of, hey, we have a client to take care of, or we have XYZ to take care of. So can I ask you to take 30 minutes or an hour out of your personal life to complete this? Right. Because the ultimate job at hand is to serve our clients.
Right. Good point. Sara, we have one last thing to talk about, and that's the career progression. Do you want to kind of touch on that real quick as we wrap up?
Yeah. So Victoria, when we were getting ready for this, you were talking about how that career progression and that, everything that we've just talked about, work ethic, motivation, those are all foundations to build on your career trajectory. So how would you advise people, even inside our organization, but, just into the whole world, to our whole listener audience, how would you advise them to use these foundations to build and to help with their career?
Yeah, no pressure there. A whole lot.
Right.
Do it in 3 minutes or less.
We believe in you.
No, but I think it all starts with you. You have to kind of know yourself. You have to you talked about Clifton's strengths. Until I came here, I had no idea that arranger was my number one skill. And that made so much sense once you told me that, because that's exactly what I do. I take all the information and I try to make the most efficient path forward that's the most win-win for everybody. That's what I do. And I had no idea that was a skill until I took that test. So it is a little bit about knowing yourself and about what it is that you like to do, the type of people that you work best with, that motivate you, that, inspire you, knowing where you want to go, what's important to you. Is money more important to you? Is title important to you? Is just being able to have a more balanced work-life balance important to you? Those are the things that, as you're deciding where you want your career to grow, start with that. Once you know that, then you kind of can create a path of how to get where you want to go. If you want to be partner, then sure, it makes sense to think about what are the steps I need to do to get to partner. Okay, well, if I start as a tax analyst, then I do senior tax analyst. Okay, what are the certifications that I need to do to that? What are the work experiences or industries that I want to try to get into? And then you look for those opportunities and you volunteer for those things, those projects that will help you either get noticed or gain you experience or exposure that you wouldn't have had before. And sometimes, like my path, it may take a little bit of a lateral move to get ahead. But a lot of times those teach you so much and can propel you even higher than just that next step up because you've had that experience and you learned all the nuances that go into that decision process or that particular project. And so you get it at a deeper level than just reading it in a book or taking it in a class. And then finding people that can be a mentor, even if it's not a formal mentorship program, people that you admire or respect, or you think that the way that their career grew was be something you'd like to emulate. Those are the types of things where you can look for those opportunities and really kind of reach out to that, because typically people who've gotten to where they are, they like the fact that you admire them and they'll share that information with you. Most of them are pretty willing to share. Sarah, I imagine that's exactly how you feel and your path partner is the people that you respected and admired, they helped get you to where you are too. They kind of mentored you formally or informally to get to where you are, and look at you now. And now you can reach back and do the same.
Exactly.
Right?
Insurance.
So yeah. And that's, it's important. It's important that you find a place that values that. Like at CCK, we're all about coaching. We're all about training, certifications, growing your knowledge, growing your experience, getting opportunities. That's, if you can find a company like that that is going to help promote your growth and not stunt your growth, that's even better. And that will take, and there's also, the other thing I wanted to touch on is the path to partner is not the only path. There can be other paths in public accounting. You can be a technical expert. You could be a really great people manager and leader of a division and manage that division better than you would ever be as a partner who needs to go and build a book of business or things like that. So success is not one thing. Success is what you think success is.
It's for you personally.
Yeah, it's your personal success. It's
Nobody
not,
should force it on you.
Yeah.
right.
Victoria, I loved what you said, going back to the motivation piece, that not everybody is motivated by the same carrot. Some people, it's monetary motivation. Some people, it's appreciation. Others, it's to have a global impact, whatever that is. But in the past, we had a tool that we used in recruitment, and it was an assessment that helped us identify some of the ways that people were motivated. And it's interesting because leaders who would look at their motivation would oftentimes catch themselves kind of judging that motivation. And that was a challenge because, in my opinion, it was, we're not here to judge that, but we're here to identify that and see if we can lock arms and help this person become a high-performing individual in our environment. And it's really interesting because as we take a look at these motivations, we have to really do a pulse check and making sure that we are of clear mind before we look at others' motivation and start to put judgment and condemnation on theirs, because it's their motivation, not ours. We're just asking, how can we lock arms and go do something really cool?
Yeah, it's an objective piece of knowledge, and you use it to whatever advantage you can. If I know that words of affirmation are really going to motivate Christy, I'm going to tell her she's doing a great job and that this is the best thing I've ever seen. And I'm going to mean it because I'm a sincere and authentic person, but I'm going to do that versus giving her a gift card or helping her try to do her project. I'm going to use what speaks to her. And that's what motivation from a manager standpoint is. It's knowing your individual employees, what motivates them and what's going to get the most out of them from the project. And not in a manipulative way, but in an inspiring way.
Well, Victoria, you've done just an amazing job with this discussion. We want you to know that we appreciate you. Let me just ask you this question. If someone's listening to this podcast and they say, man, that Victoria's really got it going on, I'd really love to connect with her. What's the best way for someone to connect with you?
Probably LinkedIn. Either LinkedIn or contacting me through CCK are probably the best ways to find me. Yeah, I can say I've had a lot of on-the-job training and a lot of things that people don't necessarily want to have on-the-job training in. So
Lots of experience.
if you can ever learn from my experiences, I am happy to share them and help you learn.
Well, one experience we want to give you right now is a surprise. Sara has a new end of show segment
Sara has it.
that we're wanting to experiment with you. So take
Is
it
it like the
Sara.
Colbert questionnaire?
Yes, yes, it is. It is. I mean, honestly, I got to give props. I did steal Colbert's questions, but I'm going to put my own little spin on some of these.
Good.
All right. So, are you ready? This is us getting to know Victoria a little bit better. Okay, Victoria, what is one thing that you own that you should really throw out?
Oh God, so many things.
Something had to come up just right at the top of your head.
I will say that I am somebody who does not like to get rid of favorite shoes, even when they are past the point of needing to be gotten rid of. So that would probably be my answer.
Pair of shoes. All right. What's your favorite action movie?
Fifth Element is one of my favorite.
Oh, okay.
Just because it makes me laugh, and I love the diva scene, and yeah. I think that's probably one of my favorites.
Nice. All right. Apples, oranges, or bananas?
Apples, because I can put peanut butter on them.
Ooh, nice. Okay. Favorite smell or scent?
Gosh. I don't know. I don't know that I have a favorite smell.
Well, you're
Probably
baking
banana
rolls
bread.
today. Oh, banana. See,
Okay.
yeah.
My mom's
That's
banana
good.
bread. Yeah.
Nice. All right. Okay. So you're in HR. What's your least favorite word?
My least favorite word in HR, and it has nothing to do with HR. I just think it's gross. But when you take a break from meetings and they call them bio breaks, I don't like that. It's just gross to me.
Next time you're up here, I'm gonna be like, I gotta take a bio break.
I'm like, TMI. I don't need to know that.
All right, last one. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
What profession other than my own would I like to attempt? Probably, if I was athletic enough, I would probably want to be an athlete.
In what? Anything?
Um,
Anyone in particular?
I was much better at softball than I was at soccer, but I would probably choose soccer because they don't play as many games.
An athlete on your own terms. Yeah, like nice.
Well,
Love it. Thank you, Victoria. That was fun. That was fun. Jeff, did you
that
like
was.
it?
Good job.
Thanks for being a good sport on that, Victoria. And with that, we're going to wrap up. I don't know about you, but I'm getting all these kind of things. This is our first Teams podcast recording. I'm getting all kind of pop-ups to sign in. So hopefully this is all taking and going well, but we probably need to wrap up. But Victoria, again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being a part of CCK and for sharing your expertise. I hope our listeners got what they wanted this morning or today by listening. We talked about the different generations. We talked about HR issues. We talked about tattoos and piercings, and we talked about the way we communicate and the way we work together. And at the end of the day, we just all need to get along. That's my harmony coming out. But hopefully there was a takeaway for you as a small business entrepreneur. Hopefully there was something as an employee or a teammate. And so thank you for listening. As always, if you would like to connect with us, we would love to connect with you. You can email us at podcast@cckcpa.com. That's podcast@cckcpa.com. Thank you so much for listening. We also have our thank yous. Thank you to CCK, our amazing sponsor. And to KP, thank you for your on-air, whatever you do, keeping us straight. To Robert for the intro and outro music. And we have a new one this time to one of our marketing gurus, Natalie Renfro. Thank you so much for helping us get organized and doing this stuff. But again, we hope that you take away some useful information from this podcast, this episode. And we hope that you will join us next time when these two CPAs get together for a chat, and you'll get to find out who's on the mic.
The information provided on this podcast is for general, informational, and educational purposes only and does not constitute accounting, tax, legal, or financial advice. While we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, laws and regulations change, and individual circumstances vary. Always consult with a qualified CPA or professional advisor before making any financial or business decisions. The views expressed by the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of any organizations they are affiliated with. Listening to this podcast does not create a client-accountant relationship. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge and agree to those terms. And that's a wrap for this episode of 2 CPAs in the Mic. If you found today's episode helpful, please subscribe, share, and leave us a review. Have questions or ideas for a topic? Reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Email us at podcast@cckcpa.com.